Hello, we're back. Back to the 3 p.m. bake along. Still not 3 p.m, but we're baking. We're baking iced buns. Now, our dough has been proving and resting in our cupboard for about an hour. I'm going to wait for everyone to jump on board because we've got people baking along, and then we're going to take a look at our dough. There's an alarm going on. Oh. I apologise everyone, I'm also making brownies at the same time, so if an alarm goes off, I'll have to take my brownies out of the oven. So that's the thing, you know, while you're making your bread, you can get other things done. It needs to rest, it needs to prove for a while, so you can do other things. So, hello everyone, welcome back. I'm going to get my video up so everyone can jump on board. Our dough has been resting and proving for, that's the old video, has been resting and proving for an hour. So, we're going to take it out, we're going to have a look at it and see if it's ready. Been red in the face today, I've been working hard, kneading dough and making iced buns. So, let's get our video up so we can see all the comments. Hello and welcome back everybody. So, I know, yeah, double baking. Oh hi, I'm just whipping up some brownies, might make some millionaire shortbread in a bit as well. You know, multitasking. So, while you were away, you should have measured out your jam. I managed to get my jam open. Yes, I did. Opened up my jam. Without the help of a man, I opened my jam. Run it under some boiling water, it helped. But it's got like lovely big chunks. It smells amazing. Proper fresh, homemade jam. It's got big chunks of strawberry in, which means my iced buns are going to have lumps of strawberry and actually salivating. So, I've cleaned my surface. All of my stuff is away. I've just left out my flour. Because at this stage, although earlier on we couldn't put any flour down on our surface, at this stage, feel free to put a bit of flour down. But the first thing we're going to do is we are going to get out our baking tray. Oh, our dough has been proving for 1 hour. However, this is where you kind of have to be honest with yourself when it comes to the baking, because if your dough hasn't risen enough, we may have to leave it a little bit longer before you shape it, and you can't really rush these stages. You want to be honest with yourself. If it hasn't grown enough, then you're going to need to leave it a bit longer. So let's have a little peek at our dough first and see how it's been getting on. Oh, it feels quite cool in there now. Da, da, da. You're the first ones to see. I haven't looked at this in an hour. For an hour. How are we getting on? Oh. Oh. See, my dough hasn't risen very well. Quite dense, so I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it a bit longer. I'm going to prepare everything else and I'm going to have to leave my dough longer. Now if yours has grown, it should have doubled in size. I mean, mine has grown, just not very much. It definitely hasn't doubled. So I'm going to leave it out. I'm going to leave it over here by the oven. It's nice and warm. And we're going to get everything else prepared first, and then hopefully it will have grown a little bit more. Now the second proof for this dough is going to be a lot longer. We're going to need to leave our shaped buns to prove for about 2 hours. And that is because, if you remember at the start, I told you that anything you add to your basic bread ingredients hinder the growth of your dough. They stop it from rising, stop the yeast from working as well. So, once we shape it and add a big blob of jam to the middle of it, we're going to need to leave it to rest a bit longer so that it has time for those bubbles, those air bubbles to grow. Now, what I'm doing, I've floured my surface, a little bit of flour. Mine's the same. Yeah, no problem. We're going to leave it to prove a bit longer. So let's cover it back up, put it back in the warm place. It's very warm here in the kitchen because I've got the oven on. So I'm actually just leave this on the side because it's really nice and warm. Oh, I wonder if the conservatory's warm. Oh, toasty warm in here. Somewhere nice and warm. The warmth, again, it doesn't need to be in the oven. It doesn't need to be anywhere too hot like that because you're going to overprove it. Basically what happens is it gets too hot, lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of air bubbles create too quickly, and then they all collapse, and that's called overproving. And when that happens, you cannot rescue your dough. You basically have to start again. So at least we haven't overproved. Right, so we're going to flour our baking tray as well. Now, when we have shaped our dough, we're going to shape it into nice little balls. We're going to be able to get 12 buns out of our dough. Then we are going to assemble them in circular configuration on a baking tray. Now, if you don't have a big wide baking tray like mine, and yours is a bit smaller and narrower, then you're going to make more of an oval or an oblong shape. But floury baking tray, floury surface, that's all ready. We've got our jam measured out, and we can make, while we're waiting for our dough to prove a little bit more, we can make some brownies. That's my brownies done. Let's put them out of the oven while I've got a second. Have a look at that. Oh, wow. Leave those for a bit to cool down. I'm going to leave my oven on to keep the kitchen warm to help with the proving. So we can make up our icing. So what we are going to do at this stage is we are shaping our dough and filling it with jam, then leaving them in a kind of circular configuration to prove again. And we will need some cling film to cover them with. It's best to use cling film for the next stage, and I'll explain why. But let's mix up our icing so that we're all prepared, and it also gives our dough time to rest and time to grow. Let's whip out the icing sugar. Now, we're making iced buns, which means we need icing for the top. Now this asks for 250 grams of icing sugar. That's quite a lot of icing sugar, but it's going to be nice and thick. You don't want it runny, you want it really nice and thick. So measure out your icing sugar into a little bowl. I'm already thinking I'm going to need a bigger bowl. I'm going to need a bigger bowl. What film's that from, eh? But let's see how we get on. So 250 grams of icing sugar. It's going into a little bowl. Try to kind of spoon it out because it tends to get all smoky and you get like icing sugar smoke everywhere. Dust, icing sugar dust. Whoop, there we go. 250 grams of icing sugar. And then what we're going to do is pop some water in a separate jug, and we're just going to add it a spoon at a time because we want to make sure that our icing is nice and thick. You don't want runny icing because we want it to be a nice thick layer on top of our buns. So we're just going to add 3 tablespoons to start with. Just normal tap water will be fine. And we're going to mix it. So each time you add a little bit of water, give it a good mix. Oh, I've just realised that I've now got sugar all over my spoon, so I'm just going to pour a little bit in at a time. Once I've mixed it well, and I know that all that water has combined with the icing sugar, and we definitely need some more, dribble a tiny bit more sugar, that's probably about, water even, that's probably about 2 more tablespoons, and mix. Because if your icing is too runny, when you put it on your warm buns, it runs off and you end up with more of like a glaze like you'd get on a donut. A really thin glaze, whereas we don't want that. We want a nice thick glaze, a nice thick layer of icing on a rice bun. Now this is actually coming together into the texture I want. You want it as thick as possible because you can always add more water, but if you start having to add more icing sugar, it becomes a bit of a pain. You end up having to add lots and lots of icing sugar when it's too runny. So start off thick and you can always water it down. If it gets too runny, again, add some icing sugar, but you're going to have to add quite a lot of icing sugar. So if you can manage it, start off with something really quite thick and just water it down as you go. How's everyone doing? It was 250 grams of icing sugar. You can put some vanilla essence in your icing. Yeah, let's do it, why not? Don't put too much in though, because it's already very sweet. So I wouldn't put in, I'm going to put in like a couple of drops, but not too much, otherwise it's going to be way too sweet. Yeah, why not? This is what? Baking is experimental, creative, adaptive. We can just add what we want, add different things. I'm going to taste it now and see what that's done to the flavour of our icing. It's made it a little bit runnier, but that's fine. Have a little taste. It's nice, actually. I could probably stand a little bit more. Tasty. Good thinking, Rich. That's what I like. like, you know. Got any ideas, things that you want to add to it? Ooh, what else? Add the lid to the icing. That's not very clever. Hi everyone. Hi Susie. My cousin Susie's watching. Hiya. How are the kids? Give it a stir. A bit of vanilla in there. Now I'm gonna. It is very thick. I'm gonna add a little bit more water, just so that it's a bit easier to work with. Only a tiny, tiny little dribble. And I'm gonna mix that in again, because we can always water it down later on if we think it's too thick to go on our buns. Mix, 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 mix. Have a look at the clock. So our dough has had, we're going to give it another 15 minutes. So we're going to have another look at it at 2 o'clock. And then we're going to shape it. That's the thing with bread dough. You need to kind of just keep an eye on it, keep checking it. After your hour, then after another 15 minutes, and just keep looking at it, because until it is properly proved, there is no point shaping it. You need to give it time. We've added lots of dairy and things to our normal bread mixture, so it needs a bit more time to kind of prove and to rise up and get those lovely air bubbles. Right, our icing's made, so that's one job done. Have a little bit of tidy up, and then we'll get our dough out and have another look at it. So I'd get your weighing scales out as well, and if you've got one, some sort of metal plastic cutter type thing. Oh, you know what I also have, which is really, really technical? A dough scraper. This is great for getting the dough out of the bowl. So get all your equipment you need. Make sure your cup of tea is warm. Need that nearby. This is what we're going to use for cutting the dough. It's best to use something like this, like the blunt side of a knife works really well. If you've got a knife that you know is really bluish and blunt anyway, then you can use the blunt side of it, something like that. Makes it easier to separate your dough, and you will see in a moment what I mean. Get your scales out, because we're going to separate our dough into 12 balls, 12 buns, and we're going to weigh them so that we're being a bit more precise with our buns. Mostly, the reason being, we're going to shape them, put the jam inside, assemble them, and then they're going to prove for about 2 hours. It's going to need a long prove now, looking at how that dough has risen. So they're going to grow. They're going to grow quite a lot. And if there's a small difference in them now, once they've grown, there'll be a massive difference, because the ones with more dough in are going to grow a lot more, and they'll end up looking quite odd. I mean, obviously it doesn't matter. I've made several odd things through this whole process, but they'll still taste amazing. But if we can be precise, we should. So I've got my scales, I've got my icing made. We don't need our oven on yet, because we've got to prove our buns for hours yet. But my oven's on to warm up the kitchen. In fact, I'm going to turn the oven on. Look on, ooh, check on your brownies. You can whip up something else in the meantime. Whip up some brownies. I had to use self-raising flour because I ran out of plain flour, so I'm intrigued as to how they've turned out. Right, let's go get our dough. Bringing out my dough. It's had another 15 minutes in the conservatory, and we're going to have a look at it. I'm going to leave it just a couple of minutes. I mean, we can have a chat in the meantime. What time is it? It's got 1 minute. I'm not going to rush it. I'm going to leave it for that last minute, and then we'll have a look. It doesn't need to completely double, so it's not going to grow the same as a basic bread recipe would, but we need it to have a little bit more time to rest than it did before. Keep your, what's this called? What is this? It's a tray. Keep your baking tray to hand, so that once your dough is shaped and filled, we can assemble it straight away. We don't want to take too long with the shaping of our dough as well, so bear that in mind. We're going to move relatively quickly through. It's quite a simple process. We're going to separate it out into 12 equal portions, then we're going to roll out the dough a little bit, fill it with jam, pinch the base so that it's into a nice ball and our jam is well enclosed in that ball. I'm going to pop it on our tray, and that's all there is to it. Right, let's have a look. It has risen, just not very much. And it's not overproofed. We're getting some spring back. And we're going to leave it for a long second proof. So let's whip it out and see what we've got. Onto our floured surface. We've definitely got some bubbles in there, which is, oh, giving me hope, everyone. Right, the first thing we're going to do is just give it a gentle kneading on our floured surface, and that just knocks back any of the air, of which there is not very much. Okay, now what we're going to do is shape it into 12. So we're going to do it by eye first, and then we'll start weighing it out. Split it in half, and we want to end up with 12 buns. So just portion it out as best as you can by sight into, I've done each half into 4. There we go. Oh, my maths is absolutely terrible. I'm thinking, what am I doing? 1, 2, 3, 4. Chop them all up, and then we can weigh them to see if they're equal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Ta-da! Now some of them are obviously bigger than the others, but let's weigh them and see. So, about 90 grams for one. Let's go for 90 grams. So see if we can weigh them all so that they're around about 80 to 90 grams. How big's that one now? Add a little bit, and that's what all you've got to do. You've just got to kind of take a little bit, stick with kind of 80 grams, steal a little bit from other ones until you've got your 80 grams, and then that portion is done. Weigh that one's 70, 80. Doesn't have to be like perfect, so don't worry about spending like an excessive amount of time, but just so that they're all around about 80 grams, then we'll be fine. How much is that one? That's a really small one, and this is a really big one. 40, 60, 80. There we go. And this is all you need to do. Just literally go through, adding a little bit from other ones if they're a bit too light. That one's 78, that's absolutely fine. 81, fine. 78. Oh, that one's a bit small. Where's my 81? That one's 81. Take a little bit off that one. Great. So we should all be around the 80 mark. And there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Just checking everyone. So, everyone doing all right? Portion up your dough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you've got 12. And then we're going to move them all out of the way, and we're going to shape the first one. So we're going to knead it a little bit first, just so that we know all those little bits that we've chopped and added are all combined in there. And then we're going to get a little rolling pin out, and we're going to roll it. Now if you haven't got a rolling pin, don't worry, you mostly just have to spread it out so that you've got room to put some jam in the middle. That's all you really need to do. So spread it out, and then I'm going to put a spoon of jam in the middle. Quite a good dollop of jam into the centre, and then I'm going to pick up all the edges and pinch them so that we encase the jam inside the dough. Pull and fold the dough and pinch it so that all the jam stays in there. Right. Lift. Now the jam's quite sticky, and it's actually going to stop your dough from coming together. So you need to kind of lift and pull from underneath the jam until the dough seals around it. It will seal, so just persevere with it. Try and get a little bit that doesn't have loads of sticky jam on it. And if in doubt, get a bit of tissue and wipe a bit of the jam off. You just kind of pick it all up, pinch it all together until you've got a good seal on the bottom, like so. Like making a dumpling, I suppose. Making a little dumpling. Make sure it's well closed up. I'm just pinching away. Right, and then we're going to place it on our baking tray. Now, do the next one, roll it out. The bigger the better, we've got more room then. Put a big dollop of jam in the middle, and I shall show you again. Whoop. So try not to touch the jam with your dough. Try and pinch the dough together around the jam without getting any jam on the outside, because the jam stops your dough from coming together. But you can be pretty rough with the pinching. Really pinch it firmly so that it joins. That's much better. The other one needs some attention. And then just place it on your board, leaving a little bit of a gap between each one. So you can see there, got a little bit of a gap between each one. And carry on like this, that's all we need to do. Rolling out our little portions of dough. Getting a good bit of jam, blob it into the middle, and then collecting up the edges, and put a bit more jam in that one. Collecting up the edges and pinching them around the jam. You're going to end up with a lot of dough on the bottom, but it's better that way with a good tight seal than having your jam leak out as it bakes. So just a good pinch on the bottom. Oh, look, there's a hole, quick. Pinch it around so that no jam's going to escape. And then we're putting it pinch side down onto your tray. That's all there is to it, and carry on like this. Dun, 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 dun. Shape your dough into a little ball and then roll it out. Don't worry if it's like sticking to your rolling pin, it shouldn't be too sticky. Use a bit of flour if you want to, but be careful with your flour because your flour will stop the dough from coming together as well. So try not to get too much flour onto your dough because pinching it together will be more difficult. Big blob of jam. I'm using kind of, I suppose, a tablespoon each time. So quite a lot of jam in there. And then pick up all the edges, kind of like a dumpling, and pinch them all together, making sure that there are no gaps where jam can escape. You don't want the jam escaping, really pinch it together well. There we go, well pinched together, shaped into a little ball, like so, and onto the tray it goes. Now I'm kind of doing a circular configuration with my dough, so we should end up with like 3 in the middle and 9 around the edges. So bear that in mind. I'll reposition my very jammy one. 3 in the middle and then 9 all around the edges. Rolling out, rolling, 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 rolling. And we just keep going like this. It rolled out well. The bigger it's rolled out, the easier it is to pinch together. But it is a little bit fiddly, so just take your time. Spoon the jam in. Yeah, I'd say about a tablespoon of jam each time. Should always add more jam. Now that I've managed to actually open up the jar. Okay, good pinching motion. Make sure all of that dough, you have to be quite firm while pinching your dough so that it really seals. There we go. Flip it over, shape it into a bit more of a ball, and on it goes. That is all there is to it. I'm going to carry on like this. Make sure everyone is doing okay. Try not to be concerned that our dough did not prove very well. How did your dough go, Jenny? Jenny Vincent, how's your dough? Let us know. Mine and Rich's first proof was not the best, but I'm going to leave it somewhere. And the dough is quite cold. So I need to find a warmer spot, Rich. Find a bit of a warmer place within the kitchen or within the house to leave it. Oh, need more room, stretching. So I can pinch the dough together without the jam sneaking out. Come out, there we go. Woo! Pinch it all together. Nice and firm. Don't want the dough escaping. So if any starts to escape, you really need to pinch that dough closed well. There we go. Halfway through now, we're halfway through. Maths is never my strong suit. Rolling out the dough. Yeah, maybe the cupboard under the stairs was just a bit cool today. It's definitely warm in the kitchen, so I might leave my dough for a second proof just out in the kitchen. Okay, pinching and picking up the dough, pinching it in place. Lovely sticky jammy buns. Ooh. Really needs a good firm pinching. Pinch that bun. Pinch that bun. There we go. We all like a good pinch bun, don't we? There we go. Rolling out my dough, filling it full of jam, pinching it all around, putting it on my tray. That's all there is to it. My dough likes to stick to my rolling pin, but that's absolutely fine because I would rather it stick and not use any flour than use lots of flour and then not be able to pinch it back together again. There we go. Pinching it all back together. Hi Jan, how you doing? We're making ice buns. Pinching our bums together. There we go. Next one. Seasons of love. I'm going to drive you all mad saying that now because it's stuck in my head. Right, spreading out our dough. Putting some jam in the middle. I am running out of jam. I've been quite generous with my jam. But I've got more jam in the fridge. You can't have jam at buns without lots of jam in there, can you? Pinching the dough into the middle. Make sure all that jam stays put. Try not to roll your dough too thin. Otherwise what happens is you end up with lots and lots and lots of dough on the bottom of your bun and then none on the top covering the jam. So bear that in mind. Try not to roll your dough too thinly. You just want it a big enough circle so that you'll be able to add the jam to the middle and pick the sides up around it. So don't roll it too thin. I'm gonna get myself some more jam out of the fridge. And you can kind of pick it up. If you feel like you've rolled it too much, you pick it up a bit like that, it kind of shrinks back together. There we go, pinching it all around. Making sure the jam stays in. And I literally am going to have to get some more jam out of the fridge. I nearly used all my jam. But I've only got 2 more to do. So let's get some of Mom's jam out. Spoon of that in. So I did weigh it out, I promise. But I've just been a bit overly generous, clearly. What's 180 divided by 12? I'm not going to do it in my head because I'll get it wrong. Hi. Don't worry. You can do it any time. Well, if they turn out right, you'll soon see. If our buns turn out hideous, then you have to do them anyway. It's the proving, that's what it is. We need to over prove them a little bit more. Okay, with just 2 left, I'm going to put half of the jam in this one, and then half of the jam in that one. So roll it over and pinch all the ends together again. Really firmly. Pinch, pinch, pinch. Turn it over, shape it into a ball, and onto the tray it goes. And I've got room for just 1 more. Now again, make sure you've got a little gap between each one because we want them to grow and come together as they prove. There we go. Well, it's definitely grown a bit because we didn't start off with this much dough, did we? Right. Rolling out the last one. Fill it full of jam. Oh, that's a nice big chunk of strawberry there. And then pinching all the edges together. Last pinch. And then shape it into a ball. And onto the tray it goes. Now, we're going to cover this. We need to cover it with something that's going to stop air getting in and drying it out. However, we can't cover it too tightly with anything because that's going to stop the rising. We want it to have space to grow. So I've used plastic bags and things previously. What we're going to do today, what I'm going to do, and feel free to join me, is I'm going to cut off a big piece of cling film and I'm going to oil it, because we don't want the cling film to stick to the dough, but it's going to touch the surface no matter what. So I'm going to rip off a nice big piece of cling film. I'm going to put a bit of oil on it, oil a little bit of my cling film. Literally just pop a little bit of oil on the surface of your cling film, rub it all across, carefully so that you don't collapse all the cling film on top of itself. And this is going to add a little bit of moisture to our dough as it proves as well, which will help. So just smear the oil across the surface of the cling film, because it's going to touch the surface of the dough and this will help it not to stick. And then I'm just going to lay the cling film across the surface like that and just tuck it underneath a little bit. So as you can see, it hasn't got a tight seal, but it has got room to grow, and that's what we want. Now we need to leave this somewhere nice and warm, and we need to leave it for a good 2 hours, because the first prove was very slow. So what's 2 hours? 3:15. Let's come back at 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock we're going to come back to bake our dough. Now I'm going to leave mine in the nice warm kitchen next to the oven, and it's going to prove for a good 2 hours, but we'll be back 3:15, yeah, 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock we will be back and we're going to check on them. Get your ovens on and heating up to 200 degrees just before we come back. So like 10 to 4, get your ovens on and heating up to 200 degrees. And then we'll be back to bake our buns, and hopefully they've worked. We've got everything else we need. The only other thing we need is our icing. It's already made. Don't worry if it gets a bit crispy on the surface. Once you give it a good mix, it'll be runny again. And that's all we need to do. I'm going to crack on with my brownies, get them portioned up. Enjoy the next hour and a half, hour and a bit, and I'll see you at 4 o'clock to bake our buns. Thanks everyone. See you in a little bit. Bye.